Hello, I'm about to demonstrate how to properly troll the Borg. Trolling the Borg is a fine art, as you'll see. It's probably the best effective way to help your teammates in elite STF matches. Now, as you can see, we're doing the usual opening for the Conduit. Obviously, you want to go right after the big cube and then eventually the spheres. Much like in the old RPGs, you always attack the greatest threat. I am, of course, flying an Aatrox carrier with elite Tholian fighters and elite Scorpion fighters. Probably the best things you could get in the game as far as carrier pets. Of course, I haven't got a hold of elite Peregrine, so I don't know if they're all that effective, but I digress. We're just about done dealing with the spheres, and we're about ready to head toward the first of 2 transformer generators. I've come to learn that fighters tend to have a mind of their own, so every time I finish with the spheres and the cubes in the opening, I always recall them and try to use my own weapons against the cube hovering over top of the generator. Eventually I realized that the other players have their own carrier pets as well, so that can't really be controlled. Now we're about to witness the dreaded 10% rule, which is to synchronize every player's efforts to blow all the generators up, and then go after the transformer to minimize the amount of time required to blow it up. Because nobody wants to fail the bonus objective. Everybody wants them fleet marks. I tend to go for the 30% rule myself, because chances are you're not the only one firing on one particular generator. And do you really want to be the one to have to answer to the rest of your teammates regarding who blew the generator early? Okay, now that one of the generators has been taken out, it's okay for me to release my fighters and stick them on the generator and eventually the transformer, thus minimizing the time even further. In time, I have learned ultimately that having carrier pets will help you minimize loss of life and limb in terms of dealing with the Borg. Just so long as you keep your distance when dealing with them, as you'll see in a more crucial part of the mission. At the time of this recording, which is September 30th of 2013, the Borg are programmed to play a time-consuming game of Ring Around the Rosie, in which they will circle around the gate and try to attack you on the second revolution of their clockwise spin. Sometimes they'll get caught in the gate and have to force their way through, but eventually they will, because the gate has been spaced just evenly enough to where a sphere could pass through the strats. but ultimately it does add seconds and even minutes to the clock. And unfortunately, you can't afford to mess around. Now, as you can see, we are attacking the second cube and eventually the second set of generators and transformer. After I finished recording, I learned that some of my fighters had indeed broke off and started attacking on their own. Not all of my fighters were in fact recalled, as I had attempted to do. I wanted to be able to control where my fighters were going and when. Once again, the 10% rule applies. We want to make sure all of our efforts are synchronized, which is very difficult to do if you are not in a voice chat with the rest of your team. As you can see, the spheres are now being triggered, and it's time to launch fighters. All of our efforts are now set on the transformer itself. The second transformer has been blown, the tactical cube of Phase 3 has spawned, and this is where the fun starts. This is where it pays off to have a carrier. As you can see, all the rest of the players are focusing on the spheres and eventually the gate, but not the cube. The cube will attack whoever attacks it first. Although I figure in future updates the cube will just attack whoever gets closest. As you can see, the cube is now focused on me because I have attacked it. But I'm doing my best to keep my distance. You want to stay at least 10.5 kilometers away. It helps if you bind the two fighter bays to the 1 and 2 keys so you can easily reach them. So you won't have to keep clicking those two commands. Now, I'm not moving too far ahead of the cube. Just staying far enough out of reach to remain a proverbial carrot on a stick. And as you can see, the cube is focused on me, but it's also focused on the fighters. But it's not quite blowing up the fighters. It's attempting to, but it's not doing a very good job. Now, it might be the fact that these are, in fact, elite fighters, and they're just harder nuts to crack. Not sure if that's the case or not. Eventually, 1 or 2 of your fighters will go down, in which case you can easily replenish them by sending out more fighters. But the important part is to stay out of reach of the cube. At this point, I am more or less leading the Borg cube around by its collective appendage. Yeah, we'll call it that. As long as you remain a tasty treat, the Borg will continue to follow you. But as long as you stay out of reach, you will not be harmed. And if you are just big enough of a pest, none of the other players will ever get hurt when they eventually attack the cube themselves. They will still... The cube will still be focused on you, no matter what. And that's the best part. You can just idly sit out of range. The cube, as you can see here, the cube is now completely stopped. I'm not sure if this is a bug or if it's just simply the cube just not knowing what to do. But the cube is no longer pursuing me actively. It's just hanging around the station, trying to deal with the fighters, but not doing a very good job of it. And now the rest of the team is finishing up their work and about to set their sights on the cube itself to finish the mission. Now keep an eye on the tactical cube, its distance, and who it's focused on. Do not take your eyes off the cube for the entire fight. I would like to take this time to say that Star Trek Online is in fact a fun and rewarding experience for Star Trek fans that have been waiting for what might be the best Trek game that has ever been made. While it is by no means perfect, it does rather come close. And now we are coming up to the end of the match already, and once again, the cube had not left my sight in terms of focus. This is what's known as kite tanking. I'm not sure if it's a frowned upon tactic. I'm just letting you know that it works, and works well. And now that we're idling and the team is wondering what the hell just happened, I'll talk a little bit about my personal gripes with the game. As I said, STO is by no means perfect. Unfortunately, the ground combat made the game unbearable for most of my friends, and my fleet is a mere shell of what it once was. If only Cryptic had just stuck to the idea of space combat, we would have a great alternative to EVE Online. Plus, I take issue with the lack of options for a Federation Dreadnought, which I had purchased early last year. Supposedly, it's a vessel built for war. But if that's the case, why can't I take full advantage of all of my bridge officers? I spent the time building them up. Why not have 5 or 6 commander stations? Also, the Phaser Lance ripped holes in Klingon warships in the Next Generation finale. Why does it barely do jack crap now? If that would mean making a vessel horribly OP, then at least charge more for the ship. Does Cryptic not want to make money? Also, at the time of this recording, Hive Onslaught and Cure Found are broken to the point where they're nothing more than an instant 1-hour ban just for joining the missions. Cryptic, guys, what the hell happened?